Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Ethan Rosen, associate director with PredictIt, the stock market of politics. We're going to take a look at how traders are pricing in passing of the reconciliation bill. We'll also take a look at the post-Dobbs era. It's great to see you as always, Ethan. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and let's talk about that. The reconciliation bill looks as if just about a 70% chance that this will actually get passed by the Dems.
Yeah, so Manchin and Schumer, of course, came to an agreement after well over a year of kind of waiting to see where Manchin would end up. Now, the bill that Manchin and Schumer came to is definitely not as far left, not as big in terms of spending as a lot of Democrats had hoped for, but a lot of Democrats see this as their one shot. So you might ask, well, if Manchin's on board, why isn't this at 99%? There are a couple of reasons for that. The first is Kyrsten Sinema, and I think she is by far the largest. There are concerns among Democrats and concerns among PredictIt traders that Sinema, now that Manchin is on board with this deal, Sinema has an effective veto over the legislation that she is prepared to use. People don't know where she stands. Sinema is notoriously independent and also notoriously does not speak to the press and allegedly keeps some of her positions hidden from her own colleagues. A second concern is attendance. Democrats and Republicans, for that matter, have been dealing with a series of health issues, including absences from COVID. Senator Leahy just came back from hip replacement surgery. And, that's the type of thing that usually you would think, well, it's not that big of a deal. But in a 50-50 Senate, we saw the price of Democrats passing it actually shoot up today on news that Senator Cornyn, a Republican, has COVID. Not because Cornyn is himself, the key opposition to the bill, but because in a 50-50 Senate, any absence makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it's almost mind-blowing a bit to hear how percentages are moving just based on who is going to be present and who's not. I don't think we would have been having this conversation a couple of years ago. But let's turn to Kansas for a moment, because they will be voting on the first post-Dobbs abortion ballot measure.
Yes. So this is a ballot measure. It was put on the ballot by Republicans because they wanted this to coincide with the August primary, where they thought they had an advantage. The background for this is that the state Supreme Court has found that the Kansas state constitution, so note that this is separate from the federal issues that we've seen, at play recently, contains a right to an abortion. Republicans put a ballot measure on that would overturn the Kansas state Supreme Court decisions. They expected this to be a layup. When the Dobbs decision came down, however, there is an expectation that Democrats and swing voters who are maybe left-leaning on this issue have been re-energized, in particular with on this issue. This is a big deal. There's also, if you watch ads from liberals in Kansas right now, you would actually think that they took a page out of the playbook from Republicans when Republicans were fighting against vaccine mandates. There's a lot of talk about, government overreach, government mandates, but this is going to be a big one to watch on Tuesday.
Yeah, and equally interesting is perhaps this is working in the Democrats' favor, because this is the first time that you and I have spoken about it, at least this year, that midterm Senate control is virtually tied for the first time in the first few, in several months.
Yeah, so our odds hit 50-50 today. They've been going a little bit back and forth all day, but yeah, this is a new thing. Republicans were heavily favored to take the Senate only a few weeks ago. I have to say the turning point for this, and you'll see it on the chart, the turning point for this was when the Dobbs decision came down on June 25th. We saw a lot of movement towards Democrats really beginning that day. But there are a couple of other things that are going on besides, just abortion, which a lot of people do think has energized liberals. There's also, and we've talked about this before, the matter of Republican candidate quality. There are a lot of concerns that Republicans are effectively ceding Pennsylvania, which you would expect that to be as close as any state is going to get. Republican leaders are now openly talking about the possibility of just giving up on the state, which nobody would have expected that a few months ago, but that is really the responsibility of Dr. Oz and his campaign there as the Republican nominee. You see a similar thing happen in Ohio. This is a state Republicans would expect to win by, double digits or close to double digits. Instead, they see themselves as being at a mild disadvantage right now. We see a similar thing in Arizona, a similar thing in Georgia. Republicans are concerned about that, and voters are concerned about the quality of Republican candidates. Now, a third thing, if I may just mention to tie this back to the beginning, is that Democrats have had and look to be on the verge of a recent string of legislative victories. And whether this makes them look more competent or whether it just, re-engages voters, who knows? But I think momentum is on the side of the Democrats right now.
Yeah, Ethan, it's so interesting. I can't recall a time, and granted, my background's not in politics, but to see strategy shifts occur so quickly seems to be very unusual. I mean, perhaps it's because of social media and we're able to discuss issues more openly as a public versus it being debated behind the scenes. But it really is quite remarkable just to see how fast the strategies are shifting, not just Republicans, but with Democrats as well. It's really moving quickly.
Oh, absolutely. And look, Republicans thought just a few months ago, they thought the 2022 election was going to be about vaccine mandates and masks and kids in schools. Then they thought it was going to be about high gas prices, which is definitely still a factor. But now Democrats think that this is going to be a referendum on abortion. And if that's the case, Democrats think that goes in their favor. Republicans think a referendum on gas prices goes in their favor. So you're going to see the two sides, shift focus back and forth between those two. But the Dobbs opinion, at least in our market and in our odds, was an earthquake. It was.
Yeah. All right, Ethan, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you for having me.